Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing, right here on the SHR Media Network, where masculinity is still in vogue and faith has not been neutered. Today is Tuesday, March 10th, in the year of our Lord 2026, and we're not just talking politics. This is spiritual warfare and suicidal empathy in full effect, but it's dressed up as progress. So we are done pretending, we're done pulling punches. We are not going to apologize. And you're not going to find weighted blankets in a safe space right on through here. Not going to happen. So before we get started, I did want to just ask you to do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And because that really helps us out with the algorithm and getting this message out. So if you want to join the conversation as well, head over to YouTube. That is the best place to do that. We're in many different places, but we see the most chats in the YouTube chat. So head over there and click on the live in the SHR Media YouTube channel and hit us up. We would very much like to hear from you. All right, y'all, let's get after it. Now, for years, we've been told that this new crop, this new generation of progressive politicians are moderates. They're reasonable people, pragmatic voices. They are, according to them, to hear them tell it, the adults in the room. But when you look at the rhetoric and then weigh it against the policies and the alliances that they make, that moderate label starts to completely disintegrate. So today we are going to be looking at the pattern between Zohran Mamdani, James Talarico, Abigail Spanberger, and others who have campaigned as so-called moderates and then govern and vote with a very, very different worldview, because sometimes the moderates aren't. Now, something very interesting happened in New York this weekend. There was a protest outside of Mamdani's residence, Gracie Mansion. And it was an anti-Muslim protest led by Jake Lang, who, by all accounts, I don't really know a whole lot about him. I know he's been involved in some of these protests in the past, and a lot of conservatives are not real big fans of him. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about him, but he organized this protest, and a couple of Muslim extremists crashed the party and threw IEDs into the crowd. And according to law enforcement, they were consuming ISIS propaganda. But if you paid attention to the headlines, especially mainstream left-wing American propaganda, you wouldn't know. You would not know. Because especially, and one of the most egregious was the New York Times. And they put out this headline. They've since retracted it and republished a different headline. But this was the original headline that they ran with. Smoking jars of metal and fuses thrown at protest near mayor's house. What do you even say to that? Because it's just so obviously misleading and complete and utter nonsense. But it's what you come to expect from the New York Times. And CNN had another equally ridiculous headline. Let me see if I can find that, because I just came across that not too long ago. Let me see if I can pull that up, because it's well, I can't. It's not a big deal, but you can just imagine it's CNN. That should be enough said. The commissioner, the police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, she held a couple of press conferences, and this is one I want to highlight, because this, and she probably didn't want to do this, but this pretty much breaks down the problem that we're dealing with when it comes to Islamic extremism, Islamic terrorism, ISIS, just the Islamic takeover that Jake Lang was organizing this protest against. So let's go ahead and take a look at this.
As alleged in the complaint, the defendants were inspired by ISIS to carry out their attack. There should be no confusion about what ISIS constitutes. It is a designated foreign terrorist organization responsible for deadly terrorist attacks across the globe, and has taken credit for mass casualty attacks in Europe, the Middle East, and right here in the United States. And as alleged, both defendants have admitted that they acted on Saturday because of ISIS. As Qayyumi was being placed into an NYPD vehicle following his arrest, a person in the crowd asked why he had done this. As shown on NYPD body-worn camera footage referenced in the complaint, Qayyumi responded with ISIS. And at the precinct, after being advised of his Miranda rights and waiving those rights, Qayyumi said in recorded post-arrest statements that he had watched ISIS propaganda on his phone and that his actions that day were partly inspired by ISIS. The complaint also details statements made by Amir Balat after his arrest. En route to the NYPD precinct, Balat made spontaneous statements without being questioned by NYPD officers that were captured on body-worn camera footage. He said, "This isn't a religion that just stands when people talk about the blessed name of the Prophet. We take action, as well as, if I didn't do it, someone else will come and do it." And later, after waiving his rights, he requested paper and wrote a message declaring in part, "I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State. Die in your rage, you kuffar." Now, "die in your rage" is a commonly known ISIS slogan, and kuffar is an Arabic term that refers to non-believers.
Now, I know that was kind of a long clip, longer than I usually play, but I really wanted everyone to actually hear that. That is what we've been saying all along. We've been telling you that these people hate you, they want to kill you, they want to take over, and they said in no uncertain terms, that's what we're here to do. I don't know. I don't know how CNN and the New York Times and all these other American propaganda outlets come up with it. They say, the perpetrators themselves say this is terrorism. The police say it's terrorism. But the American Pravda says it's a protest incident. These people are tedious. Now, the two suspects are now facing federal terrorism charges, and they threw IEDs outside of the mayor's residence. In fact, I want to show you this, because this guy is an alleged comedian of some kind, and I thought I had that queued up. I do have it here. I'm just gonna have to pull it up, because I really want you to see this, and then I'm gonna tell you about this guy and his reaction after the fact. And I really don't understand what it's gonna take. I mean, in New York, they elected a Muslim mayor who sympathizes with Islamic terror, is palling around with one of the guys who planned the, I believe it was the '93 World Trade Center bombing. And I believe he was also involved in the 2001, the 9/11 attacks. And for some inexplicable reason, they still elected this guy. And now this is the result. But check this out, because this guy is allegedly a comedian of some kind.
We were born and raised in New York, and we want everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside and then tell everyone else.
Now, he posted, the guy who was talking about how they want to keep everyone in New York, he posted later on X that he still stands by that, despite the fact that a guy, an Islamic terrorist, threw an IED right over his shoulder while he was protesting in his favor, mind you. Is there any greater example right now of suicidal empathy than that? Through this, that's terrorism. Textbook definition. I have a really hard time wrapping my mind around a lot of this stuff. These people are insane. Just as President Trump said in his State of the Union speech, these people are insane. Now, we talked about the New York Times and CNN talking about how they couch this in really vague, non-threatening language. Protest, clash, device. Don't frame it with any ISIS references. Don't talk about terrorism. Don't talk about the ideological motive behind it. None of that. It's the ideology. When the ideology fits the narrative, then it's extremism. But when it doesn't, suddenly it's complicated. And I talked about Mamdani. This took place outside of his home, outside of Gracie Mansion. This, it's beyond parody at this point. It really is. This was him responding to that attack. And listen to his explanation.
Good morning. On Saturday, a protest was held outside Gracie Mansion, where I live with my wife, Rama. Neither of us were home at the time. This was a vile protest rooted in white supremacy entitled Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City. I'm the first Muslim mayor of our city. Anti-Muslim bigotry is nothing new to me, nor is it anything new for the 1 million or so Muslim New Yorkers who know this city as our home.
Of course. Of course, he is going to blame Islamophobia. He's going to blame white people. But the fact is, there is, in effect, an Islamic takeover, not just in New York. I've talked about it happening in Texas and Florida and other states across the country. And despite some of the lip service paid to it by people like Greg Abbott, they're still taking money from these rich Islamists to promote their agenda. It's still going on. And until there's a much more serious effort to stop it, it's going to continue. And something else that happened, I believe it was in this same press conference. He was asked about his wife. And let's take a look at that.
You should have a chance, I think, to respond to this. As an off-topic question, I'd like to know what your reaction was to the article in the Jewish Insider that was posted about your wife's social media activity. And what I'm wondering is, you're an elected official. She is not. Is it anybody's business, and is it fair to question you about it?
My wife is the love of my life, and she's also a private person who has held no formal position on my campaign or in my city hall. I, however, was elected to represent all 8.5 million people in this city, and I believe that it's my responsibility, because of that role, to answer any questions about my thoughts and my policies and my decisions.
So he's not going to say anything about his wife's social media activity. And that is in reference to recently coming to light his wife liking a huge number of social media posts in favor of the attacks on Israel on October 7th. And it should really come as no surprise, given their religious background. They're Muslims. They hate Jewish people. They hate America. So it really should come as no surprise that they liked social media posts in favor of those attacks. And so it probably shouldn't, it probably won't. He's probably not going to condemn these two terrorists that attacked the anti-Muslim protest. He won't. We just heard what he had to say about it. It was rooted in bigotry, anti-Islamic bigotry, which, if there is such a thing, wouldn't have anything to do with all the Islamic terror attacks that have taken place over the past decades. Wouldn't have anything to do with what happened on September 11th. Wouldn't have anything to do with any of what we're seeing happen, what we saw happen over in Iran, what we're seeing happen in England. No, that completely unrelated. It's just anti-Islamic bigotry, Islamophobia, or something. Now, the different threads in this story, the radicalized individuals throwing IEDs, October 7th sympathies, headlines that obscure the true nature of the incident. When you combine all of that, people who are paying attention, now leftists, they don't see anything wrong with it. They're leftists, so what do you expect? But people who are paying attention will ask, or should be asking questions as to why these things are being ignored. Noticing that these things are being ignored and wondering why. Now, those of us who have been dealing with this for a long time, we know why. Others who may just be coming into it should be asking the questions, why? And that's what we're here to do. We're here to answer those questions. But a free press it's not their job to manage the narrative. A free press is supposed to tell the truth. And I think we all know that the truth is something that the American Pravda, CNN, New York Times, BS Now, and all the rest of them, the truth is something they're allergic to. If investigators tell you that it's ISIS propaganda, terrorism charges, IEDs, that's not protest. That is a national security issue that needs to be addressed. And it can't be addressed case by case. That'll never work. It has to be addressed at the root. And the root is Islamic terror. Period, end of. All right, I could spend a lot more time on that, but I want to move on because there is a lot to get to. I may not even get to everything I had planned today. Hey, Rick, thanks for joining us here in chat. We appreciate it. Thank you all for being in chat. Thank the moderators for holding it down and keeping everybody in line and abiding by the rules. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. Whether you agree or not, thank you. And we will try to do our best to persuade you that we're right. All right. I want to get into the Texas primary. I didn't get a chance to really get into it, and there's a lot I want to get into. And you know what? Before I do, because this could, I could, yeah, I could. This could take a while. So before we get into that, let me get a word in from our sponsor. And our sponsor for today's show is Burning It Up Hat Company. And the hat that you see me wearing today is from Burning It Up. So if you're going to wear a cowboy hat Wear one that actually means something. And Burning It Up Hat Company built me this custom Navy hat, and it fits like it was made for me because it was. Clean lines, strong crown, sharp look. Absolutely love it. This isn't something you just grab off the shelf. It's built by a woman who knows her craft. If you want to stand out without saying a word, get your hat made at Burning It Up Hat Company. Built right, worn proud, because no one wants an ordinary hat. So head over to burningitup.com and check out all of the great hats and designs that they have over there, and get yourself a custom-made hat. All right, y'all. I am Big E, and you are watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men Briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where you can catch our great lineup, Sackhead Sean with the Edge of Liberty, every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Jersey Joe with the Reaver of Common Sense, every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. BZ with the Berserk Bobcat Saloon, every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. And Lyle Armstrong with the Beer and Bullstein. So he is on Fridays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. So please be sure to check out all of those great shows. Those guys have some great content, some great insights. So be sure to check it out. Like, subscribe, share the channel, share those shows, and pray that we continue to have the breakthrough that we have had this year. We hit a couple of milestones, and we're really appreciative. So help us continue that march. We want to reach as many people as we possibly can. And now back to the briefing. And I wanted to get into this James Talarico winning the Democrat primary in Texas for the Senate. He defeated Jasmine Ratchet, and a lot of people are saying that he's the better candidate. He's the more moderate candidate. I think that is a complete lie. Crockett was loud, aggressive, ghetto. Yeah, I said it. Had viral clips, activist rhetoric, constant outrage and accusations of racism and all the rest of it. And James Talarico presents a more calm demeanor, presents as more moderate. But his nomination doesn't signal a pivot to the center. They just pivoted to a different presentation of the exact same politics. And I would submit that James Talarico is probably even more progressive, more insane than Jasmine Ratchet. They're not moderating, they're rebranding again. Talarico is very different from Crockett. He presents, as I said, a calm demeanor. He uses a lot of faith language. He has this pastoral delivery. But when you look at his policies, when you look at the things that he says, the ideological direction is not just similar, but I would contend that he is even to the left of Ratchet. And it's a strategy we've seen before. It's a strategy we've seen before. Abigail Spanberger in Virginia ran as a moderate. Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey ran as a pragmatic centrist. And others around the country different tone, same exact left-wing lunatic policies. They don't move policies to the center. They move their messaging to the center. And I want to I'm gonna get into this because James Talarico really annoys me. He really does. And he annoys me for a very specific reason. He frames his politics in religious language. He's a seminary student. I can't remember if he actually graduated from seminary or not. He uses a lot of scripture references, moral framing to his policies. But the policies align with a complete left-wing agenda. And I've said before on this show and on various platforms, social media platforms, you cannot be a Christian and be a Democrat, because everything that the Democrats espouse is what the Bible teaches against. Everything. Gender ideology, abortion on demand, all the far left social policies. He was recently on a podcast, and is it just me, or does he come off as a creep? Maybe it's just me, and maybe it's just because I know the things that he's saying are just creepy. But listen to this, and then you tell me. Maybe I'm wrong.
Something that you love that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children who showed up yesterday at the state capitol to advocate for their humanity. They shouldn't have to, but it was an inspiration to watch.
He loves trans kids. So I talked about how he's a seminary student, and how he couches a lot of his rhetoric in religious language. And of course, he's been all in on this trans nonsense. But he was also recently on The View. Well, it's been, I guess it was, I don't know, a month and a half ago he was on The View. There are a ton of clips, and I'm not going to play them all because it's just too much. But I did want to play this, and it's probably going to be one other one I play. But let's listen to this, and then I'm gonna break it down, because this plays into why he annoys me so much.
I mentioned that my granddad was a Baptist preacher, and when I was real little, he told me that we're supposed to follow Jesus's 2 commandments: love God and love neighbor.
Okay. That was such a simplistic statement, and a lot of people, like these harpies on The View, are just going to fall right in line because they're going to believe everything that he says without any sort of critical thinking, and obviously never having read the Bible. But let's continue.
Mm-hmm. And I believe forcing my religion down the throats of my Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, agnostic neighbors is not love. And it's why I've fought so hard.
Okay. All right. he's giving a very simplistic reference to Matthew 22:37 and 39, where Jesus says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." The left has a very exactly, Karen. And it's so much more than that. But anyway, the left has a very twisted definition of love. To them, if you love someone, you let them do whatever they want, however they want to do it, and cheerlead every dumb decision and every evil impulse that they have, because affirming them in that sin and in that stupidity is what they consider love. And to try to correct them is hateful. The biblical definition of love is completely different. In fact, it's the complete opposite when you think about it. Love is what you feel for someone when you are concerned for their well-being. It involves affection, compassion, care, self-sacrifice. That's why it is completely loving to tell someone that just because they think they were born in the wrong body doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean that they are correct. Doesn't mean that God made a mistake, because he doesn't. And that's one of Talarico's biggest subjects. We just heard him say he loves the trans kids. And he's given speeches on the floor where he's talked about 6 genders and just all your typical left-wing gender ideological nonsense. But he also talked about in that clip about forcing religion on people. But that's what Muslims do. That's what Muslims do. If he really were a Bible-believing Christian, he would know that Christians don't force their beliefs on anyone. We're not called to force our beliefs on anyone. We preach the gospel to them. We pray for them, but we recognize that God gave us free will. We know that hell is hot. And it is completely unloving to not share the gospel with them, because we don't want to see anyone end up there. And this is why it annoys me, because he's twisting the scripture to fit his narrative, which is completely antithetical to what the Bible teaches. Someone in the chat said, Satan quotes scripture and twists it to fit his narrative. There were a couple other clips I wanted to get to, but this is the one that we're gonna finish up with, I think. I thought I had it queued up, but I'm going to get it here in a second, because, like I said, this is one I really wanted to highlight and get into, because he was on Joe Rogan's show and he quoted another scripture and took it to a completely. He lied. He just flat out lied. So let's take a look at that. Here we go.
But I say all this in context of abortion because before God comes over Mary and we have the incarnation, God asks for Mary's consent, which is remarkable. I mean, go back and read this in Luke.
He actually had the nerve to tell people to go back and read it. He actually had the nerve to tell people to go back and read it. And anyone who reads it, now I haven't read every translation that there is, but I have read a lot. And he's referencing Luke chapter 1, 30 and 31. And it says, and the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. Didn't sound like a question to me. I can't believe, now Joe Rogan is not a Bible scholar. He just asks questions. I don't expect him to do much pushback on this, but I don't know. It boggles the mind that he actually said that, told people to look it up, and then continued to lie blatantly. And there are people who believe him. There are people who believe what he said. They're not going to bother to read. They're not going to bother to pick up a Bible and read it for themselves. They're just going to believe, oh, God asked for Mary's consent. But then Mary, in later on in verse 38, says, behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. That's Mary submitting to the will of God. But he couches his and there are so many other instances that I'm not gonna go through all of them. I have a bunch queued up, but I'm not gonna. He couches his religious background in something palatable for people who don't have a religious background or who have some animosity towards the church. He makes it palatable for them to accept, wrapping his progressive policies in some fake moral authority. Knowing that his base, as I said, is just gonna believe it, is gonna swallow it hook, line, and sinker. But here's the thing. Leftists like him know something politically. And this is why they do this. They know that the country is nowhere near as progressive as the activist base. They know that it is nowhere near that far left. So the solution isn't, as far as they're concerned, to moderate. The solution is to translate their progressive ideology into calmer, more palatable language. Translate activism into compassionate rhetoric. Translate policy into moral testimony. It's not new. They've been doing this for decades. Michael Knowles' book, which I read, Speechless, Controlling Words, Controlling Minds, goes through meticulously the history of the left and their manipulation of language. And so it's definitely worth the read. If you're familiar with Michael Knowles, it is definitely in his style It's very, he's very educated, and so it comes off that way, but it's still very much worth reading. Loud progressives who don't couch their language in any palatable way scare voters. Jasmine Ratchet, case in point. Keep in mind, when she won her seat, she was not the ghetto hood rat that she came off to be, or that she morphed into. She was very calm and well spoken. And then she flipped the script. But those loud progressive voters like that, politicians scare voters, but the soft-spoken ones are the ones who win elections. All you have to do is look at Jasmine Ratchet's record. So Talarico's upset of Jasmine Ratchet didn't signal a move to the center by any stretch. It's just the next evolution in progressive politics. Same direction, different tone. Ideology did not change at all. They just got better PR people. All right, let's pivot to some other alleged moderates, and I want to talk about Virginia. Abigail Spanberger is about to run Virginia into the ground. She campaigned as this moderate. She campaigned as someone who was a law enforcement officer, CIA. She claimed to respect the Second Amendment, and every word was a lie. And we tried to warn people. And I don't want to say they voted for her anyway. I think too many people stayed home and allowed her to win. But I don't know if Virginia has a method to recall elected officials, but I really hope somebody does. I really hope somebody does try to recall her, because she is a disaster. A mother by the name of Stephanie Minter was stabbed to death at a bus stop in Fairfax County. And the suspect was an illegal alien with a long criminal history and over 30 prior arrests for rape, assault. And ICE issued a detainer asking local authorities to hold him for federal custody. And Abigail Spanberger, well, her first day, I believe it was, she signed an executive order stopping her law enforcement officers from cooperating with ICE. And then when this happened, I think this might have happened the day before that. The timeline's a little murky right now, but she said that in order for them to cooperate, ICE would need to produce a judicial warrant. Meanwhile, so she's allowing these people to run the streets and also pushing major gun restrictions, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. let's take a look at this, because this story right here, this tells the tale. Illegal alien murder suspect will not be turned over to ICE without a warrant. And ICE's Twitter account put out a statement basically saying that this was asinine and legally illiterate, because ICE is empowered by federal law to take these people into custody. And Stephen Miller also responded with a very good explanation, which is what we all know. People, they don't need a judicial warrant. They're here illegally. They're slated to be deported. And Stephen Miller explains, federal judicial warrants are for arresting and charging people to stand trial for specific federal crimes before a grand jury. They have nothing to do with deportation. She is protecting criminals at the expense, at the lives of Virginia citizens. And then putting Virginia citizens in further jeopardy by trying to restrict their Second Amendment rights. The first duty of government is to protect its citizens, protect them from criminals. In order to do that, they have to enforce the law against violent offenders and then protect the ability of the citizens to protect themselves. And Virginia is moving in the opposite direction on both counts. And we knew this was going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. We knew she was a radical from the word go. She's not letting law enforcement cooperate with ICE, and then she's restricting gun ownership. The criminals in this case are the only ones who can operate freely. They don't have to worry about ICE. They don't have to worry about, I mean, the guy who killed this woman in Virginia, 30 arrests, walking the streets. Why was that even a thing? And so we know that she's not cooperating with ICE and the federal detainers. But several gun control bills, which Glenn Youngkin, while he was in office, vetoed. But of course, the radical left Virginia House of Delegates put them right back on the floor and passed them. And they're headed to her desk there's some that she's already signed. But some of them include restrictions on carrying semi-automatic weapons in public spaces. Expansion, and we've talked about these before, expansion of regulatory authority on enforcement provisions, firearm control measures packaged across multiple bills. But the biggest one just passed the other day, SB 749, targets the sale, manufacture, and transfer of many common semi-automatic firearms, which is, according to them, as they put it, assault weapons. And here is the state senator who sponsored this particular bill. And I want to see if you notice anything.
Look at us to say we are one of the reasons why they don't have to go through those drills, because we made sure that a place that they call schools or home, wherever it may be, is a safe place. So, Madam President, with that, I ask and renew my motion that we agree and concur with the House amendments.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House substitute for Senate Bill 749? All in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote?
Of course, they didn't, and it passed. But I asked if anyone noticed anything about the particular senator who sponsored that bill. And of course, he's a Muslim. His name is Saddam Aslan Salim. He was not born in this country. And I'm going to say something that I know a lot of people are going to take issue with, and I don't care. If you were not born in this country, you should not hold public office, period. I don't care if you're a naturalized citizen, don't care. If you were not born an American citizen, you should not hold public office. He was born in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is, I believe, 91 or 93% Muslim. And we know Muslims hate the United States. Muslims hate the West. And yeah, I know he grew up here. He spent most of his life here. His parents immigrated when he was quite young. I get it. I just don't care. He should not be in a position to shape laws in this country. And I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for that. I don't care. We can look at what it produces. Look at what's her name? I can't believe her name is escaping me right now. It's probably on purpose. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and all the other ones, the lieutenant governor in Virginia. Zohran Mamdani. It's a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen. It's a disaster happening, if we're honest. But getting back to the point, these people are restricting. They're enacting laws aimed at ordinary citizens who actually obey the law. I know that there are some who probably won't obey some of these laws that are being put forth in Virginia, and a lot of them I'm sure will get overturned eventually, but they're not going to go to the Supreme Court immediately. So in the meantime, barring some district court putting in an injunction, these laws are going to go into effect. People like my parents are going to be felons pretty much overnight. The guy who is accused of the murder of that woman at the bus stop, he already ignored the law. He's an illegal alien, and he committed murder and a string of other offenses. But the people who obey the law are going to get a whole new stack of restrictions that's going to make them criminals almost immediately. They already ignore gun laws. They already ignore immigration law. They already commit violent crimes. But these new laws never, ever target them. That just doesn't make sense on any level. Granted, I would submit that we don't need any new laws. We just need to enforce the ones that we already have. If we did that, we'd be okay. If we did that, we wouldn't have illegal aliens with 30 plus arrests going around killing people. So instead of targeting the criminals, they target the law-abiding citizens who follow the law, get their licenses so that they can have a permission slip to engage in their God-given rights. Gun control never, ever controls the criminals. It controls the people who were never the problem to begin with. And it just shows you that they prefer controlling citizens over confronting criminals. And in a lot of cases, and I've said this before, they use the criminals as their militia, basically. Because criminal enforcement is difficult, but regulating citizens is easy. You can't regulate a cartel, but you can regulate a concealed carry permit holder. You can't tax a criminal, but you can tax ammunition. The left would, government in general, I shouldn't just limit it to the left. I mean, Republicans are guilty of this too. But it's easier for them to regulate the innocent than confront criminals. And the founders understood this. They understood that they put the Second Amendment in for a reason. Not for hunting, not for sport, not for recreation. But they understood that governments are made up of human beings. And human beings fail. And they will fail to protect their people. And self-defense is the final layer of protection. You are your own first responder. I've said that many times. And so the right to defend yourself becomes that much more important when the government stops enforcing the law. The right to keep and bear arms exists precisely for the moment when governments fail to keep the peace. Virginia offers a very, a very important lesson. They hesitate to deal with criminals, but they run full bore towards regulating citizens. That is the complete opposite of what public safety looks like. And Abigail Spanberger, just think about it for a hot second. On what level does any of it make any sense? If they're not going to enforce the law, then the last thing they should be doing is disarming people who obey it. All right, let's pivot, because I want to get into this. I had one other story I wanted to talk about. Maybe I'll get to it after this, but I really wanted to get into this because this was another story that was just the outrage machine was just looking for something to oh, these people are ridiculous. So the latest scandal for President Trump is a hat. President Trump attended the dignified transfer at Dover, and he saluted the fallen as they were being taken off the plane. But he was wearing a hat. And somehow that became the story. Not the sacrifice that those service members made, not their service, not the families of those service members, but the hat. They looked at a ceremony honoring the fallen and decided the real story was a white baseball cap. So let's take a look at this, and then you'll see. These people are just sometimes I don't even know what to say. I really don't. But check this out. So there were so many posts about President Trump from people like Michael Steele and other ex JoJo from Jers, talking about how he was being disrespectful for wearing the hat, the USA hat. The president is a civilian. He is the commander-in-chief. And later on in the ceremony, he saluted as the coffins were being unloaded from the plane and loaded into the vans. The salute, the president's salute isn't even required. Ronald Reagan started that. Before Ronald Reagan, presidents rarely have ever saluted, but he started doing it, and it just became a tradition. There's also no real dress code for the commander-in-chief. And I don't think President Trump is the first president to salute while wearing a hat. But the entire outrage cycle was built, this entire outrage cycle was built around a rule that doesn't exist. Military regulations apply to soldiers in uniform, not the commander-in-chief. Yes, Biden looked at his watch. But the real story is not the hat. The real story is not President Trump's behavior, which I took absolutely no issue with whatsoever. And there's still pictures of him with his hands halfway up his torso. It's a still picture from a video where he's adjusting his jacket. And of course, the left is, well, what is he doing here? What is he? It's just ridiculous. But the real story isn't that, isn't any of that. The real story is how the dignified transfer became political theater in the first place. For years, the public never saw them. And I think that's how it should be. But the Pentagon restricted media coverage for the returning of our fallen soldiers. And that started during the Gulf War. It was to protect families. Period, end of story. And it was to prevent political exploitation. But in 2009, that changed. Obama decided to allow coverage if the families consented. Some people think that decision makes sense. I'm not one of them. But it meant that cameras were now going to be in the room and on the tarmac. And when the cameras arrive, the politics is right behind. Right behind. And these controversies happen on both sides. Even though I submit that looking at your watch as the remains of a fallen soldier are moving past you is a lot more disrespectful than saluting while wearing a baseball cap. Maybe that's just me. But I mean, people will analyze this and say, come up with all kinds of reasons why someone was being disrespectful, whether it's they didn't stand the right way, their facial expressions, and now we're talking about hats. This ceremony, like a lot of other things when it comes to the political arena, it's a political Rorschach test. You are going to see and be outraged by what you want to see and be outraged by. Some things are outrageous, like looking at your watch. And some things are just ridiculous, like saluting while wearing a baseball cap. But the thing is, the dignified transfers were not, they weren't created for a cable news analysis, which is why I don't think they should be open to the media at all. This is a solemn occasion. The ceremony is not about presidents. It's not about political theater. It's about the men and women coming home. It's about the honor guard carrying those remains. And the families waiting on the tarmac. The ceremony exists to honor the fallen and the sacrifice that they made, not to score political points, not to produce viral outrage, clips and rage bait, and certainly not to start ridiculous debates about the clothing choices of the people who attend. A dignified transfer should remind us, if we're going to have cameras on scene, The dignified transfer should remind us of the sacrifice that these soldiers made, not give pundits and commentators something to nitpick. I really can't stand these people sometimes. They are unbelievably annoying, tedious, and just, I don't know. I can't stand them sometimes, especially when it comes to stuff like this. Because if anyone was disrespectful, it wasn't President Trump. It was the people who are trying to make this a thing, completely ignoring the sacrifice that these men and women made. All right. There's a couple of other things I wanted to talk about and get y'all out of here. James Carville, the Ragin' Cajun, had an epic meltdown the other day. And I mean epic. This dude completely lost his mind. Excuse me. He absolutely lost his mind. And there's going to be some language. If you have kids in the room, you might want to either turn it down or tell them to go play, because he went on a tirade for the ages. Check this out.
Look, you fat fuck Trump, if you listen to this, you listen good, because what I'm getting ready to say is what a lot of people in this country speak for, who I speak for. And I speak for a lot of fucking people. You hear me, you fat asshole?
Wow.
This is what we believe. You're right. I got Trump derangement syndrome. I hate the motherfucker. And you know what? I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want to get better. I want to get worse. I want to hate him more. I pray to God in heaven, God reign the righteous reign of Trump derangement syndrome. Pray for me, Lord. I'm your vessel on this earth. Pray for the people that listen to this. We want more. We want to hate the son of a bitch so much that we can't see straight. Look, you fat.
Wow. Just wow. That was, I mean, he looked possessed. He looked possessed. And his I used to think stage 4 was the highest. That was like stage 6 or 7 TDS right there. And then he doesn't want to get back. I mean, that was demonic right there, man. That was crazy. He's lost it. He has lost. Trump broke so many people. And James Carville used to be one of the more reasonable leftists. He's been telling some of these leftists over the past few years to tone down some of their rhetoric. Trump broke him. He's done. He has absolutely lost it. Absolutely lost it. Just, it's not, I'm laughing. It's really not funny. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad, actually. Something else that's sad, and this one was infuriating. This pissed me off. And this is from someone that I used to have a lot of respect for. I used to think he made some brilliant points at one point. I used to think that he was smart and thoughtful, and something happened. Something happened to this guy. And he actually, I don't think this was on his show. I think this was on a podcast. It might have been his show. But just listen to this.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that. That's like the most atavistic instinct there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything. And so that's why it requires that level of force to get a population subdued to the point of unconditional surrender. That's why. And so in this case, of course, we don't have the ground force necessary. I don't think Americans would voluntarily participate in it. I just don't think we can do that. It would require weapons of mass destruction. It would require presumably nuclear weapons in order to do that. And let's not lie to ourselves. We're moving toward that. Unconditional.
He just said that American troops, well, he just said that President Trump wants unconditional surrender so that American troops can go into Iran and rape women and girls. What happened? And I'm not sure that is completely, and maybe it is, maybe I just don't want to believe it, but I have a hard time believing that it's just Qatari money. Something has to be wrong in your mind to think that American troops want to go into a country and start raping people. I mean, where does that come from? And maybe it is the Qatari money. Maybe he has been completely brainwashed by Qatar or whoever else is paying him. I think it's obvious. I think we all know that he is being paid by some Islamic entity or entities. Because I don't think you go from the Tucker Carlson we saw on Fox 5 or 10 years ago to this just because of money. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think that goes deeper than a bank account. That is insanity. That is insanity. And I don't get it. And it's infuriating that he actually said that with the reach that he has. And again, there are people, just like with Talarico, there are people who will believe that. There are people who will hear that from him and believe it. Yeah, BZ, sociopathic for sure. There really isn't another way to describe it. It really isn't. Demonic, maybe. Just, he's lost it. Him and Carville both have completely lost their minds. Trump broke Carville. I'm not sure what broke Carlson. And I haven't talked about him much. I probably am going to, after this, I probably am going to talk about some of the other things that he's done, him and Candace Owens. I know I talked about her a little while ago. I might bring up some stuff again because she's another one that's gone off the deep end. But regardless, these people are insane. Excuse me. Anyway, folks, that is going to do it for this briefing. But before we go, I want you all to head over to the Mission Ready Men shop and check out all of the great designs that we have over there. Check out the 250 Reasons t-shirt, 250 Reasons to Read Source Documents. And you can also check out all of the designs for everyone's show. You have the Edge of Liberty logo tee, the Reverb Common Sense, the Conservative Sherpa, and of course, the Mission Ready Men briefing tee and the SHR logos, and the SHR Media mug, which is very cool. Check that out. Head over to the Mission Ready Men shop, the SHR Media shop on Mission Ready Men. Just head over to Shop 7 Armors and you'll see the SHR shop and check out all of those great designs. All right, y'all. That's it for us today. We are not just here to fill airtime. We are here to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into future generations. And if any of what we said here today matters to you, please take a second to like and subscribe and share. Don't just watch, but like it, share it. Share it with another dude and bring him into the fight. And if you want to wear what you stand for, as I said, head over to missionreadymen.com and click Shop 7 Armors and check out all the great designs we have there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.